welcome to Connects Live with from CX Forums. My name is Mark Michelson, and I have a special guest today. Pamela Herrmann is joining us. Pamela is the Customer Experience Vice President over at Mortgage Cadence and the best-selling author of and host of Customers for Life podcast and the author of Designing a Brand Story. I believe that's the name of it. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Close.
Yes.
Really so close.
So close. And designing a story has to be just right. And I want to get right into the topic here because first of all, what is a brand story? And how do you craft that?
Sounds great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Mark. So over the last several years, we've been experiencing a real renaissance in the art and science of storytelling. And I believe it's really driven largely by businesses who understand that in order to provide a better customer experience and inspire brand loyalty so that their customers come often, buy more, and tell others, that's the key to organic growth. Businesses need to connect on an emotional level with their customers, right? So telling your brand story is really a critical part of building the brand. It helps to shape how people view you, and it enables your customers to begin forging a connection with your company. And if you do it right, you'll be putting building blocks in place that will help people buy simply because they love what you do and what you stand for. And that's really the kind of the key to the marketing gateway. So besides all of the emotional benefits, it's just a hard fact that we now have about 3 seconds to convey our story when a prospect lands on our website or when they watch your videos before they'll bounce out of there and they'll go to the next website that they see on the Google search. So we've got the attention span of about a sand flea. So we've got to be really quick and dirty with how we begin to tell the story and to create a hook. It's a noisy world. So we've got seconds to do it. You guys ready to get started? And I'm going to share with you some key essential elements to a great brand story. You ready?
Great.
Here we go. Okay. So I want you guys to think about your favorite movie. In fact, while we're here, why don't you drop in the chat, what's your favorite movie? And think about, why does it resonate? Because the story has successfully created an emotional connection with you. So I was really curious just to see if we could steal a page or two from movie script writers in use for telling a business story. Does it have a duplicable framework that we could use in our business to create that emotional connection with our prospects and with our customers? And to create even more excitement in the hypothesis, could we do it in seconds, which is all that we have, right? Everybody online is getting just these micro hits of brand exposures across the internet all day, every day. So the pressure is really on for us to get the story out quickly. So this is really, really important because this can become your key differentiator between you and your competitor. It's really going to lie in your ability to connect with them on a personal level, and stories accomplish this result. So I've got about 12 minutes to share with you some basics on how to create a brand story in 3 acts. Okay. So if you're taking notes, there's 3 essential elements to a blockbuster Hollywood script that can be applied to your business story. The first one is the character, the second one is the desire, and the third is the challenge or the obstacle. So let's take these one at a time. The character. So the first part of a really good story introduces us to a captivating main character or a hero. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, think about it in that construct. Okay, this is the person that we are looking to lift and elevate. So where the audience learns what life is like for them in their current situation. The goal of the story is to have the audience feel an emotional connection to this character. And if we don't feel an emotional connection, then we don't care and we move on as an audience member, right? So how do we create an emotional connection is by sharing little things about them that the audience can relate to and therefore develop feelings of empathy toward them. And these little tiny things are called identifiers. Okay, I'm going to share with you 5 of them. But first, I'm going to share with you just kind of a story, like a Hollywood story construct, just so you can give it some framework. One of my very favorite movies is Shawshank Redemption. Little known fact, that was written by Stephen King, which I didn't realize until recently. But anyway, I love that movie. So Andy is the main character. He's been wrongfully accused of murdering his wife and her lover, and he feels trapped in a system, right? He's in prison, and that system doesn't regard the pursuit of truth as important. So he watches all the men around him that are caught in this dead-end system. And until we don't learn this until the end of the movie, but Andy has a goal of freedom. And this story is all about his pursuit of freedom. Okay, so the character or the hero of the story has a very strong desire to pursue a visible goal. And that has a very clearly defined finish line. Okay, so that's the construct of your story. In the pursuit of the goal, they have seemingly insurmountable obstacles that they must overcome. That's what makes a great story. So, of course, the character or the hero of the story is your customer. And a big mistake that a lot of brands make is they think they are the hero. They tell the story about how we're going to solve your problem. And when you're reading it as an audience member, you're like, well, number one, you don't really get my problem, and you're not telling it in a way that makes it identifiable to me. Right? That's a common mistake we make. The other common mistake that I see, especially in B2B, is that it reads like a Baron's, story, which is as dry as Melba toast. We have to get some spice in there. These are still human beings that want to hear a good story, regardless of the product or the solution. Okay, so we talked about these 5 attributes that really connect us emotionally to the hero of the story. So let's go through them. The first one is sympathy. We identify with and we relate to people that we feel sorry for. Second one is jeopardy, right? We identify with and relate to people that we worry about, people who have something at risk. For a lot of people in business, there are things at risk if they don't take specific action. So you've got to identify that's where loss opportunity comes in, right? Likability. We identify with people who are likable or are well liked by others. Funny is another thing we can relate to. I personally think funny people are very clever, and so I'm attracted to funny people. Powerful, we identify and admire people who have strength and have a take no prisoners attitude. Okay. So to create an emotional connection to your audience, you must employ at least 2 of the 5 identifiers that your character and your story is struggling with. And so let's apply that to a brand story now. For those of you who remember Weight Watchers before their relaunch of their brand, do you remember Jessica Simpson she was one of their brand campaign stars? She's super relatable because she's likable and we're sympathetic to her, because in these ad campaigns, she's just talking about, look, I'm a celebrity, but I struggle with weight. And I just want to be healthy. I want to be a good mom for my kids and be around for a long time. And I want to go to restaurants and I want to eat like normal people. And I don't want to stress out about this sort of thing. And this works to draw us closer to her. So all of us are trying to find optimal health. It might not be weight loss, but it might just be, improve our diet so that we're healthier, heart health or other underlying conditions, right? And so she becomes really relatable. And any perception I had of Jessica Simpson before that kind of melted away. And I found myself really rooting for her. So essential element number 1 is the present state. This leads us to number 2, which is the desired goal. Okay. So the desired goal, when you look at like a successful Hollywood script, they always have the hero that's in pursuit of a clearly defined goal that's fueled by a strong desire, right? The finish line is so obvious. It's like the nose on our ideal customer's face. So this part of the story is about the journey that moves the hero from their current state to the desired goal. And sometimes I call this the magic wand question. Like if I'm having a sales conversation with somebody, I'm like, all right, if you had a magic wand and you wanted to wave it, what would that future state look like? If you didn't have to worry about money or resources or anything like that, what would that perfect future state look like? Okay. So that's the desired goal. I think about this movie Castaway. Again, an older movie, but the desired goal is really obvious, right? He just wants to get home to the love of his life, Kelly. That's it. It's a very simple desire. He's like at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He's at the base. He's stressing every day about food, water, and shelter. Okay. So when you translate this to your customer story, the more niched you are in your sector, the clearer your ideal customer's desires are. Okay. So here's a great translation into brand story. You guys may remember Dollar Shave Club. I loved that intro video they did on their website. It was a fantastic job of just nailing down the desires of their ideal customers. So here's what they know about the desires of their air quotes hero. It's pretty simple. They want a high quality razor. They want it at a fair price. They want it delivered to their door, and they want to save money and time. Okay, that's it. It's pretty simple, right? So remember, the results your product or service provides to your ideal customer or your hero in the story is the finish line, right? What results can they expect when you deliver on your promise of a product or a service? Now, if you fail to connect the dots at this point, then your audience doesn't care. There's just no glue holding the story together that makes you relatable to their problem. And that's very bad. That's when they become detached. So, number one, present state. Number two is desired goal. And because it would be boring if we stop there, we have to have number three, which is the obstacle. Every great story has an obstacle. This is the thing that's standing between where you are in your present state and your desired goal. So the goal in every Hollywood story is to get us so wrapped up emotionally in the hero's obstacles that it gives us someone or something to root for. Our emotion stems out of us really identifying with the conflict and identifying with the hero's journey to overcome these obstacles. Emotion from your audience as they're reading your website or watching a video or reading an article is going to come from these seemingly insurmountable conflicts. Okay. So let's translate that to a brand story. Airbnb, I think, is, or any company that's in the shared economy, is a great example of how they talk about this conflict in their brand story. So when you think about in the early days of Airbnb, and definitely for Lyft or for Uber, the obstacle was, what's my experience going to be when I'm in the hands of a complete stranger? Especially doing something your parents told you not to do, which is to get into a stranger's car. So the objection was so big and continues to be so big, in fact, for a lot of their customers, that it's a major obstacle to the transaction. They've got two sides of this transaction in the business equation, right? They have the person providing the service, complete stranger, and you, complete stranger, right? And the business is just the hub around this spoken hub model, right? So in the Airbnb example, the customer and the homeowner, who am I going to be staying with? Is going to be safe? What's this experience going to be like? Is it going to be clean? So what they've done very, very effectively is they've positioned the customer at the center of the brand. In fact, the customer in the case of their brand story is the host, right? So they're letting the customer be that face of the brand. And so they're telling the stories of how being a host has changed their life in some really profound and positive ways. And there's just so many great stories if you go to their website and look at how they've kind of constructed these customer stories. So instead of telling the story from the perspective of the corporation, they're letting the customers tell their stories. And that's what's shaping the narrative. It's really just a profound way of kind of looking at new ways to shape our narratives as organizations. So the key here, as we kind of wrap this thing up and we go to Q&A, is that we want your company to be the people, and that these people are real people with real stories to tell. This creates narratives that are so compelling that your ideal customer will easily see how well you understand them and that you can solve their problems. So that, in a nutshell, is how you create a great brand story. Hollywood blockbuster.
Wow, that's a lot. I was trying to take notes over here on this as well because we couldn't get our closed captioning thing going today. I'm hoping I get that soon. Telling the story, having the customers tell the story is so important. You know, there's a lot of websites with quotes on them or even like a little video clip. You know, I've always wondered, how do you really get the authenticity out of them? With all the ratings and other things that we share now about brands, is that where the story is? Is it, and how do we deal with the conflict and the insurmountable conflict to, you know, help them understand that the brand can help them rather than just trying to sell them something?
Yeah, well, that's a consultative approach, right, Mark, when you think about it? Because when you think about this framework I just shared with you, if I were having a discovery conversation with a prospect, it's no different. I'm asking them questions. Tell me a little bit about your business. What's going on? What's keeping you up at night? Those are the challenges and the obstacles, right? Okay, great. What's the desired state that you want to be? When you think about it, this is a sales conversation. So framing it and thinking about it like, okay, what do I know about my ideal customer? What do I know that they're struggling with based on what they're sharing with me? this actually becomes, if for example, taking the first part of your question, Mark, which is how do you translate that when you put a customer into make them a referenceable customer, either through video or through written word, it's the same framework. If I were just to hit the record button with a customer, I would have them start with, here's what was going on in our business and what we were struggling with. Here's what we wanted. Here's where we wanted to scale and grow. We didn't know how. Here's where we were getting stuck. In comes company A. Here's how they helped us solve that. It's the same framework.
It's almost like I guess in today's short attention span theater, we deal with a lot of short attention span on this program as well as our in-person stuff. 15 minutes, 10 minutes. If you can get your story out, that's great. Getting stories condensed into your glance. Literally, you have a minute, half a second on a Google search to appear and be considered or not. Any advice for hooking at that moment in the search to get them to go further, or at least open it up?
Yeah, I think this is where we look at the, I don't want to say it's a lost art, but I really think that we don't have a real good light shining on it, which is copywriting. Finding an excellent copywriter who can help you convey what is a longer narrative into something really snappy, whether that's through an agency or an independent contractor, or maybe you have somebody on staff, but you've got to have a good writer. It's just extremely difficult to create a simple snippet of copy that bundles the whole story together, but a good writer can do that. So that would be my advice. It's a learned skill. It takes a long time to develop that. So hire a pro.
I have a hard time telling my own story as a copywriter, trained one actually for years ago. I have no problem doing it for someone else, but it's hard for me to do it for myself. Like I feel like a fish trying to clean my own tank or something. It just doesn't work. Michelle, would you like to ask your question? Just turn your camera on and jump on in.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. Loved the way you position that. And something I was thinking about as I was listening is I tend to really highlight my customers' problem and talk about how I'm going to help relieve the pain of that problem, but not necessarily focused on how I'm going to help them get over the finish line, like you said, in desired outcome. What do you think that's causing me to leave on the table it's some similar approaches, but not quite the same thing. What do you think that's causing me to leave on the table? And just what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a social or a psychological disconnect as to how do you know if you've been successful and how are they going to know if you've been successful? So you have to get it over that finish line. And in part of a sales conversation or in a pitch, I would say that almost, I use this wording almost exactly. It's like, when you take the advice I give you, these are the results that you can expect. And that's really where I pull in data or any sort of use case that helps them visualize how their business is going to be different in that future state. So you've got the first two parts, you got to tie in the last part, and they're going to tell you what that answer is through discovery, right? So just use their words back to them. And
Awesome.
That's like neuro-linguistic programming, right? So if you're doing a good job on discovery and interviewing them, they're going to tell you what they want to hear. You use that word, those framings back to them as you're pitching them and closing them. This is so overlapping into sales. And I mean, really every part of marketing and CX, it's just so intertwined. And this is why it's really important that we think the whole narrative through.
When I think of movies and stuff, there's always a central character of some type, or maybe two, right? And I go back to themes of stories, from old style themes, man against man against nature, man against himself, kind of stuff that was like Shakespearean, right? So, coming up with a brand, if you have that opportunity to shape a brand towards a character or towards an aspirational mood, if you will. Any advice on that you might say, look, is your hero always struggling and bumbling, or is your hero strong and able, right? Where's that conflict? How do you get that across without making them appear like helpless?
So the reality is that all of our businesses have blind spots. You just talked about one. You're a copywriter by training. Mm-hmm. And experience, and yet you have a blind spot with your own. Every business has blind spots, and all of us as individuals have blind spots, right? We have our little area of expertise. So the more that we know about what those blind spots are, and you're a wildly successful person, Mark. Everybody on this call has had levels of success in their business. It doesn't matter. We all struggle to do it better. We're continuous learners. That's why you guys are here, right? You're looking to close some blind spots through learning more about storytelling. So I think it's just having that clarity around what are those blind spots of your perfect or ideal customer. So you've got to really niche down and know, and the more you know about them, the easier it'll be for you to really clearly see those patterns of blind spots across organizations.
Bruce Hamilton has a great question. Bruce, come on screen and share your question with us.
Sure. Good afternoon. It's short and sweet. It's about different customer personas. We market our services some pretty wildly diverse customers, and trying to figure out how we would. I love your approach. Just trying to figure out how we would fit that into our approach.
Yeah, it's such a good question. Mortgage Cadence has the same thing. We have buyers, and those are people that are at management or C-suite level. We have users who use our technology, right? And those are people that are system admins, and they're loan processors and underwriters. And so when we're putting together those ideal customer profiles, it depends on where they are in the sales conversation, right? So when I think about like a go-to-market strategy, we have to have very clear understanding who is sitting around that table and what do they care about at this point in the sales conversation. And even when they're an existing customer and we're talking about customer experience, same deal. It might, let's say for C-suite or a manager, they're where you are in a contract, for example, might change. So at the beginning, they're the buyer, and at the end, they're the executive sponsor. They just want to make sure the thing's working and that their team is happy and the technology is being optimized by them and they're getting full value out of the investment. That's how it shifts. So you almost have to think about it, customer experience continuum across the lifespan of a contract, and then by role, right? So I would break it down, not just horizontally based on role. I would do it vertically also based on where they are in the journey, because what they care and value may change over time. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we are just about out of time. If there are any other questions out there, feel free to just jump in. Otherwise, we're going to move towards the networking here very soon. This program, by the way, we've been doing it now since early December, late fall last year, and we are looking forward to having more and more guests. As a matter of fact, it's wonderful that we actually have guests now booked up through August. As far as the I see here we have Tricia Malloy. I know Tricia. I know her from looking at the notes here on the side. I know Tricia. We'll chat about that later. But this program has been fun to do because it is interactive and we have a lot of networking time. And when I build in any type of program for CX Forums, I always want to have plenty of time for other people to chat and meet with each other. So we're getting ready to do that right now. And if you're watching this recording, join us any Wednesday and you can join in the networking. You never know who you'll meet. Once again, thank you to Pamela Herrmann. Your advice was wonderful. Your book, by the way, sorry I messed up the title. Her book is called The Customer Manifesto. And it was ranked by number 3 by business.com, and as far as a list of excellent customer service books that every business customer should read. So if you want more on this, go back to the LinkedIn profile and go to the profile on Eventbrite, and you'll find ways to connect with Pamela there. Her website is pamelaherrmann.com. That's HERRMANN. One more thing before we go into our networking, and that is we are coming back with live events. We are looking for speakers and other participants. Our first one is going to be in Boston on September 21. Our next one is going to be in Chicago on October 19th. Our third one's going to be in Atlanta on November 9th. Then we'll be in Austin on December 14th. Next year, we have plans for Florida, for California, for Minnesota, DC, Nashville, etc. So join us over at cxforums.org for more information on that. And I'll make sure to get everyone here. I see some notes about putting people in different rooms. We'll make sure we do that. But thanks again, Pamela. You've been wonderful today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let's go and chat with everyone in the networking side. Audrey,
Great.
take us out.